Well, because Marvel Studios remembered they've had this show in a can for 3 years, the Ironheart show is finally coming out. So, I actually forgot about the Ironheart show. Kind of like how Marvel Comics forgot about her character because she hasn't had her own title in 5 years. I remember it got announced back in 2020, and then we didn't hear anything about it for 2 years. And then they started filming in 2022, and then we didn't hear anything about it for another 2 years until they began reshoots in 2024. Then in the summer of 2024, Disney released a teaser trailer at their D23 event. Like I said in that video, the show has an uphill battle because in the comics, Riri Williams is a terrible person and is written terribly by damn near everyone who's touched the character, including her creator, Brian Michael Bendis. For those who don't know, Bendis says he created Ironheart because he has an adopted black daughter and felt that there were no black characters his daughter could possibly identify with in Marvel Comics. So he had to make one himself. Riri Williams, a black girl from the South Side of Chicago. In the story, her father gets shot and killed in a robbery. Then her mother remarries, and one day years later at a family picnic, there's a drive-by shooting, and Riri's best friend and stepfather get killed. As you do. Now, it turns out Riri is a super genius, so she gets a scholarship to MIT. And while there, she steals one of Iron Man's old suits and parts from MIT to make a knockoff suit. And she is shocked, absolutely flabbergasted, that anyone's bothered by her stealing other people's things. That is the actual story. I can't emphasize that enough. I'm not making up any of this. This is the actual origin story for Riri Williams. Now, I thought Marvel would change this when they adapted it. If not the triple homicide origin story, then Riri being an arrogant, entitled thief. But no. They doubled down on it and seemingly adapted the story as written. I mean, it didn't get over in the comics. Her books never sold well. Her 2018 ongoing series debuted with almost 41,000 orders, but quickly fell in the charts and wound up getting canceled within a year, with the final issue only bringing in 9,000 orders. She got a couple of follow-up one-shots in 2020 and has appeared in other people's books, but hasn't had her own title in 5 years. In short, Ironheart isn't exactly the most popular character. And before anyone says I'm just hating on the character, no. The issue for Riri has always been the bad storytelling and character development. Even if Bendis created the character just to play identity politics, and went on to DC Comics and created the same kind of character in Naomi, that doesn't mean that Ironheart had to be written poorly, either by him or anyone else. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. At one point when Ironheart was a lead in the Iron Man series, Bendis wrote a flashback to Riri as a kid where she chastises her white teacher for not being racist. Again, I'm not making this up. Look at the screen. She's literally shocked that her teacher won't tell her she can't be a scientist. And when the teacher says that we've moved past that and asks why Riri would expect her to be racist, Riri says, quote, "I was kind of hoping you'd tell me the opposite, so I would have something to inspire me to prove you wrong." And when the teacher still refuses to be racist, Riri stares the woman down until the woman finally says, "Okay, you'll never be Tony Stark." And that is what motivates Riri to become a scientist, who steals other people's designs and technology. And the new trailer isn't any better. Riri still comes across as arrogant and entitled. I think the bigger issue for the show is that Ironheart has never been a popular character. She's never done that well in the comics, and she didn't get much of a reaction from appearing in Black Panther. There was a lot about Angela Bassett's performance, and everyone mispronouncing Namor, and people wondering why they didn't just recast T'Challa. But about Ironheart? Nada. Nothing. Nobody was clamoring for this character. The crazy part is that people have wanted a War Machine project for years. It would have made more sense to pursue that than an Ironheart show, especially after the events of Secret Invasion and the upcoming Armor Wars. The weird and ironic problem for Disney is that all the adaptations of the all-new, all-different Marvel characters kind of flopped, just like they did in the comics. Jane Foster as Thor didn't get much traction, and the movie got mixed reviews. She-Hulk has been around in the comics for a while, but the show leaned more into her recent comic book portrayals, and that didn't get over either. Ms. Marvel had okay numbers, but the character didn't take off. Falcon becoming Captain America went over exactly like it did in the comics, not well at all. And then we have Captain Marvel, who currently holds the most comic relaunches for a modern superhero, 9. 9 relaunches since 2012, and the lowest box office return for any MCU movie. Incidentally, none of these characters currently have ongoing comic series. Falcon's miniseries just ended, the others haven't had a title for a while, although some of them do appear in team books. Now, to be fair, comic book sales have no impact on TV shows and movies, and the reverse is also true. This is why the Spider-Verse films did well, but the Miles Morales comics barely sell. However, the response to the comics does give an indication of the popularity of characters. With Miles, he had a marginal popularity prior to the Spider-Verse films, but it was really the films that got him over. Even then, it doesn't seem like people like Miles Morales as a character so much as they like the idea of a black Spider-Man. But at least he was able to get some traction. The rest have not. And that brings us back to Ironheart. Like I said, she didn't exactly light up the audience in Black Panther. Nobody talks about this character. Now, that doesn't mean that the show can't wind up being good and popular. She might get the Miles Morales treatment. That's possible, but after looking at the current track record of her contemporaries, it's not probable. I think the issue is that Marvel Studios decided to lean into the all-new, all-different characters after Endgame, and they really thought it would work, especially after Captain Marvel made $1 billion at the box office. But they didn't pay attention to the lukewarm reception to Carol Danvers, or that the success of the MCU happened organically. They can't make it happen again. They can't just replace the original Avengers with new characters and expect the audience to go along with it. The draw isn't the names of the heroes, it's the characters in the suits. People aren't going to see Iron Man or Captain America. They're going to see Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, or more accurately, Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans. Disney can't just swap them out and expect that to work. And that's nothing on Disney. It's just what happens when an actor gives one hell of a performance. It's hard to follow. The main point for any of this is to get the new characters over. And to do that, you need interesting characters, good stories, and great writing. And a character like Ironheart doesn't check any of those boxes, at least not in the comics. Maybe the show will be better. It's possible, just not likely. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.